In the chamber this week, we wrap up Season 1 by talking about one of history's most infamous rogues. We explore the Old West in one of the year's largest sandboxes. And finally, we say goodbye to the worlds we've been building by discussing their adventure potentials. What would a long quest look like in this world? What would a one-shot be like? What are the hooks for future stories? Plus, the wackiness knows no limits on this episode. Hope you're expecting things to get silly, because they're gonna be silly. All this and more on Fandom Roulette. Hey everyone, welcome to Fandom Roulette. I'm Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And on Fandom Roulette, we talk about a myriad of nerdy things, including things that are historical, video games, RPGs, and whatever nerdy things we might be just pining to discuss this week. So, Cody, along those lines, what nerdy stuff have you been up to this week?
Nerdy stuff? Oh
Yeah.
boy. As per usual, one of them is the video game section. I'm dying to talk about it.
Ooh.
And
Hopefully not, because then I would be down a podcast host.
oh shit, you're right. Well, and then lots of D&D actually. You and I did a one shot over the weekend, which was super fun. It was
fun.
Jurassic Park inspired, and it was a very new DM, and she killed it.
Yeah, she did great.
And then we're doing our epilogue episode for our 2-year campaign this Saturday. So that's, I've been doing a lot of that stuff, prepping for that, and making sure that everything's all knitted up in a nice bow.
Nice little bow.
Yeah, so what nerdy stuff have you been up to?
Just same old. I got a chance to hang out with some of my nerdy friends from college over the weekend, and, he gave me some comic book recommendations, both contemporary and old school. Played some more of that Spider-Man game that's just so much fun. And then, of course, played D&D, which was a hoot and a half, especially because I got to be a wizard this time, and it was a class I didn't know that much about, and had a good time playing if I was playing it correctly, which, who knows, maybe I wasn't. But,
Well, it was super fun. I loved Ian, what was his name? Ian Malcolm?
It was literally just Ian Malcolm.
Yeah, from Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I was literally I literally just looked up Jeff Goldblum's stats, and I was just Jeff Goldblum, so who knows? Maybe he'll come back. Who knows?
Ha 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 ha
ha ha. Life,
oh boy, life finds a way.
You before you even figured out what you had, you took it and you slapped it on a lunchbox and you sold it. You sold it. Hopefully that me hitting the table comes through. But anyways, so yeah, this season on the podcast, in the history section, I was decided that I wanted to talk about rogues.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I decided that I was going to save the best for last, and talk about a gentleman named Edward Teach.
Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty good guy, right?
Okay. That's not what you told me in the pre-show.
What did I tell you in the pre-show?
You told, I feel like now you're making me the fool.
Am I setting you up, Cody?
You're setting me up.
Yeah, he's better known as Blackbeard.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
So yeah, going back to that, the most oldest and bestest of wells, piracy, for the last episode of the series.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that Blackbeard is pretty indicative of everything we've talked about during this section, for one reason or another, but there's just so much about Blackbeard that's so much fun to talk about. So we're gonna start off by and there's some fun weird little connections to other little bits of pirate history as well. So basically we don't know a lot about his early life. So it's commonly believed that when he died, he was between 35 and 40. So they think that he was born about 1680. And In contemporary records, his name is most often Blackbeard, Edward Teach, or Edward Thatch, but the most common one is Edward Teach. Other people claim that his last name was Drummond, so it was also popular that Edward Teach was kind of a sort of fake name that he put upon himself, basically so he didn't have to worry about his family being disgraced.
Smart man.
So yeah. So basically, there is a good evidence to suggest that he was born in Bristol, and he possibly was able to read and write, mainly because he was able to communicate with merchants, and he had possessed a letter addressed to him by the Chief Justice and Secretary of the Province of Carolina. And it's also possible that he was from a respectable family, but when he moved to the Caribbean, he decided that he was not super fond of this, and became a privateer. So it's possible that he might have started off life working for or working on a slave ship, and was not very fond of that lifestyle, that way of life, and so he quickly left it and became a privateer. Although, like I said, we don't know super much about the early part of his life. All we know is that he teamed up with a gentleman named Henry Jennings, who was a privateer turned pirate in the 18th century, and were living on this little island called New Providence, which, as per usual, was within easy reach of Florida, where there was lots of shipping happening. So we have quick ships, we have lots of trading, and we have a guy who knows the islands really well. He became very popular, very successful, very quickly. But after a while, he passed ways, or parted ways with the privateers that he was working with, and started doing his own reputation when he took over a French merchant vessel off the coast of St. Vincent, which was called La Concorde, and he quickly changed it to the Queen Anne's Revenge, and equipped it with 40 guns, which was a pretty decent number of guns at this time. And basically, from 1717 onward, he was going through and attacking and raiding as the infamous Captain Blackbeard. So there is some descriptions of Teach. Some described him as a tall, spare man with a very black beard, which he wore very long, which is probably where the name Blackbeard came from. Another thing that he did that I think was crazy is that he would take like fuses and little pieces of string and things like that, and he would tie them into his hair and into his beards and light them on fire. So so you constantly have this like haze of smoke flying around his face.
They actually bring that up in Black Flags. You get to meet a little bit of Blackbeard, and that's what he does before he like attacks a ship, and it was pretty dope.
Yeah, and so actually there are some historians out there who speculate that he kind of became this master of theatrics because he felt it was easier than having to actually physically attack the ships.
I mean, that makes sense, especially if you're like out and about and never know how much ammo you're gonna have at a given time. Sounds like a smart dude.
Yeah, I mean, like, there were literally people who started believing that he was like of the devil, that he had teamed up with the devil, made him look like he was a fury from hell, things like that. He was also described having 3 brace of pistols hanging in holsters like bandoliers, and basically just he was covered in guns, had this crazy aura around himself, and between 1717 and 1718, basically started building a little fleet of ships by attacking places like the Grand Cayman Islands, the Bay of Honduras, and on other places, taking ships along the way and bringing them under his command. So he had awarded himself the rank of Commodore, which is, hey, that makes sense to me because he had enough ships under his control. And getting a little bit cocky, they attacked the Charlestown in South Carolina, blockading it to basically sweat out the people there and basically attack the city or take over the city without firing a single shot.
Damn, what a ballsy move.
Right? Well, he succeeded.
Nice.
Yeah, so 3 days later, a messenger returned to the fleet and basically, true to his word, Teach granted a reprieve of 2 days. They were able to succeed. Now, here's something that I think is really interesting about America in the piracy in the context of the American colonies. During before the American Revolution, the American colonies were 13 independent countries, more or less. They all had their own sets of laws. They all had their own sets of governance, governors, government. And sometimes governors would do various things to maybe not make other governors super duper happy. So in one case, the governor of North Carolina more or less said that pirates were allowed to come and spend their money in North Carolina and that no one was going to attack them or harass them in any way.
Damn.
So basically, you could live in North Carolina without fear.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah. You know who that didn't make very happy?
Oh, I can only imagine a few people.
Yeah. Specifically, the governor of Virginia.
What?
Basically, Virginia and North Carolina are very close together.
Sure.
And so, basically, pirates could go and attack merchant ships going out of Virginia, sail right back into North Carolina, and be okay.
Oops.
Yeah, so let's just put it this way. People were not very happy about this. So, in 1718, here we go, the governor of Virginia, a gentleman named Alexander Spotswood, decided that he was basically going to deny North Carolina their clemency of pirates, and basically said that the governor was entitled to start attacking and capturing the pirates without any kind of permission or things like that. So basically, Spotswood gives a gentleman by the name of Maynard the power to basically take in the pirates as any way he saw fit. So on November 21st, my apologies, 1718. So yeah, 1718. Maynard found the pirates on the inner side of the Oracoke Islands, which were in North Carolina, and basically he blockaded them in there, fought, and basically prevented Teach and his crew from coming out to sea. So the pirates had no more than 25 men on board, and gave all their vessels, pretended that he had about 40 men on board, and then basically there was a large battle that took place. Maynard's men basically were able to trick them because they hid underneath the decks pretending that they had abandoned their ship. And then Maynard's men burst from the hold, shouting and firing to surprise Teach and his crew, which worked. So they were able to fight on the decks, but Maynard was able to succeed, and basically the pirates quickly surrendered. This is where things get interesting. Maynard examined that Teach's body had been shot 5 times and cut about 20 times, but he was able to continue to fight during this whole time before he eventually went down. And then they decided to throw the body overboard. But depending on, so obviously, there are things that may or may not have been truthful about this, but there are some accounts that suggest that he swam around the boat 3 times before diving down to go to hell. And one last thing, they threw his body overboard, but Maynard kept the head and kept it displayed on the bowsprit of the ship, basically so they could collect their reward money.
Yikes.
Yeah, pretty gruesome.
That is definitely grim.
But so basically, other aspects about Edward Teach and Blackbeard that kind of coincide with a lot of things that we have seen in other talks about pirates. Their loot was not gold, but more so things like sugar, indigo, cotton, and cocoa. Things that were incredibly valuable that you could sell and pay back to pay your crew. Teach ran an incredibly fair, tight ship. They did hold elections. They did their distribution equally and fairly as did other pirate ships. Also, depending on who you were talking to, let's just put it this way: there were some ladies of the night who were called gentlemen, or Blackbeard being one of the kindest gentlemen they had ever met in their entire life. So take that information, do with that information what you will.
Wow.
Yeah, Blackbeard.
He sounds like a Robin Hood.
A little bit. I think Blackbeard is for many one of the best examples of pirates during this time. So, basically, one of the reasons we know that he was a pirate and not necessarily a privateer like others is the fact that he was an Englishman who was attacking other English ships. That was not often happening if you were a privateer. He seemed to have been given no official commission one way or the other, and just the fact that he was sailing and mainly attacking along the American coast versus the Caribbean and other places shows that, you know, he was more likely a full-fledged capital B pirate instead of a privateer like other pirates might have been considered. So there you go. Any questions?
Nice. Well, I did want to say that now that I've heard this story, I think I've changed my new power couple thought. I do believe that Satan and Blackbeard are my new favorite power couple.
They're a pretty good one, man.
Yeah.
He's pretty dang powerful.
Man, you always do such a good job at, like, answering, like, the things that I would ask. I mean, what? Cool, so, pirates are, you know, romanticized, but they're pretty, like, ruthless and, like, pretty nasty individuals at times. Is this, like, the weird story of... Because people speculated that he was very theatrical.
Yeah.
So, do you think that he was also, like, not super into, you know, murdering a bunch of people and stuff like that? Like, is he like the best con man pirate around?
I mean, you know, sadly, I don't think anything really from his own hand survives. It's possible that he might have had a problem with it, or something like that, but I think at the end of the day, with, like, a lot of pirates, it was just this idea of they were trying to make money like anyone else, and so if you had to keep spending money on getting more, you know, getting money on more bullets and ammunition, things like that, it was going to cost money. Who knows? Maybe he was a legit good bloke who didn't want to do that stuff, but I think at the end of the day, it was as pragmatic as any other reasoning, which was got to save that money. So,
right. I got you.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I got, but that was damn. Blackbeard. Love it.
Blackbeard. I thought I'd end with a literal lighting fire in my hair.
Boom.
Oh, man. It smells like someone's hair's on fire. Oh, hey, Blackbeard. Yar.
Oh, hi, Blackbeard. It's so good for you to... Or so nice of you to come into the studio. How have you been?
I be all right, Cody. How be you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm starting to come down with a little bit of something, but I think it'll pass.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, me lad. I suggest drinking some hot tea.
You know, that's actually a really good idea. You know, gosh, you are so nice in person. Like,
yeah, yep, that's what they'd say. I be a good bloke. Yeah, yar. Oh, Cody. Oh man, Cody. So Blackbeard's sitting here on my couch.
Yeah.
I hear the door opening. Creak. Clink. 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 Well, hey there, partner.
Oh,
Yarn,
mighty fine of
might,
you to show
who,
up to the fandom roulette.
who might you be, lad? Well, I'm the protagonist from Red Dead Redemption 2.
If I want to chime in, his name is Arthur.
My name is Red. Red Dead. Oh, and you're going for your redemption then? Yeah, partner. That'd be what I'm doing. Cody's here to talk about it, so go ahead, Cody.
Oh boy. Well, why don't you saddle on in? Because a couple weeks ago, in fact, it was the 26th. So right as we were doing our Halloween episode, Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, and I'm gonna do a content warning. For those of you who are interested and are not necessarily familiar with Rockstar or just Red Dead in general, it is set in the late 1800s and has that old Western vibe, which means there is those old, not so great Western themes of racism, sexism, and just general bigotry. So not that Rockstar ever portrays them in any kind of positive light, but it's good to know before you hear this and you're like, cool, I want to pick up this game. And then it's like, whoa, there's some really racist lines in here. So, content warning for you guys. But this game, spoiler alert on my opinion, I love this game. It's super fun. This is the second in the Red Dead Redemption series. But it's actually a prequel to the first one. It's set in 1899, and you play as Arthur Morgan, who is kind of he's like a lieutenant for the Vanderlyn gang, and kind of the almost right-hand man to the leader of the gang, Dutch Vanderlyn. And
that's an awesome name.
Right? It's so good. And the game immediately picks up, and one of the things that I really like about this game is it picks up on a botched ferry heist that goes so wrong so fast. And you're literally in the aftermath. Like, people have died, people got really wounded, some people got captured, and you are running from the local authorities in a authentic/fake named town called Blackwater.
Okay.
Which Rockstar has this really kind of weird, like, it makes these references, like, you know that it's set in, the West, or, it's set in 1899, like, America, and you go to places like Louisiana, but, like, all the city names are different, and, like, not actual cities.
Okay.
It's a action-adventure shooter, I guess. I don't know if shooter's the right word, but it's an action-adventure open-world game, so... Spoilers, open world, that's how it ties in. And you play as an outlaw in a gang as things are just slowly starting to spiral out of control and this is 1899, and at least in this Rockstar version of 1899, the Pinkertons are kind of taking over and getting rid of outlaws. Like, there aren't many left, and this is kind of like the last it's a very dark story of basically the decline of this outlaw band.
Okay. Are you kind of turning on one another?
Well, I don't want to spoil too much of the story, but to give you a vague idea, it's kind of like watching a train that's is going over the tracks, but then the train catches on fire. Oh. And then there's like, wolves trying to eat everyone in the train. Like, it's just this perpetual downward spiral as this gang of outlaws is trying to, make it by stealing and thieving and murdering people. And things just get progressively worse as things go on.
Sounds like a Rockstar game.
Yeah, basically. But, man... It's such a good story. Like, I mean, you do preface that it's not a good story. Like, it doesn't like go, yeah, outlaws, but it's more like
story.
yeah, it's dark, and it's really neat because in Rockstar games in the past, or just games in the past that are like this, usually if there's like really good character development, it's like the main character or maybe the antagonist and the protagonist, but every character in the gang has some level of like character growth throughout the game, and there's a ton of members. Like I would go and list them all, but I'm just going to talk about the leader Dutch, who I feel like is, at least to me, the most interesting, because he's this leader of this outlaw gang, and he has to deal with the fact that everything is, like they make a little bit of money, but then they have to leave or flee because the Pinkertons have found them, or, they do a robbery and it's botched. And just this constant spiraling into like, just one more good job. If we could get one more good job, we're good. And throughout the game, you can almost like feel that he's starting to like having to say like, because he's like a talker, he's a smooth talker, and he's got these big speeches like, just one more job and we'll make it, we're gonna make it. And then towards the end of the game, you start to actually feel like he's saying it to try to like pep himself, because he's starting to not believe it, and like he just starts making more drastic actions as things progress. And then Arthur, who is very much like the loyal, obedient lieutenant, has Dutch's back the whole way through, starts to question his, Dutch's like downward spiral. And it's interesting because you can have these like interesting conversations with people. And I think Arthur is, the main character, is kind of self-aware that he's like really fucked up and like, likes to, he goes around murdering people and doing all this bad shit. And it's interesting to see them become self-aware of that fact and kind of like trying to live with that.
Well, it's interesting. It's I've Rockstar, I think, always is pretty good at showing that balance of like the kind of dark side of the American dream, i.e. like the criminal side of the American dream,
right?
While also showing just how easily those things can fall apart so quickly,
right? And this again, without getting into too many spoilers, like that is the story, like pretty straight through. Now, I haven't finished it. I'm towards the end of chapter 3, and I think there's 6 chapters. I can't remember. But I've heard a lot of people, and I've seen some footage because I wanted to like know what people were talking about. Once you hit chapter 5, things get a little wild in ways that you're not expecting. And some people think that the story starts to fall apart a little. But I'm also 20 hours in and still only at like kind of the tail end of chapter 3, if that.
Okay.
So much like other games, like this world is huge.
Sure.
I don't think it's quite as big as some of the other open world games, but the fact that you can only really travel by horseback and foot, that open world area still feels freaking huge. Like I think I spent an hour getting from the like 3rd location you kind of act as your home base to like a side objective, because it's all the way towards the beginning of when the game started. And it took forever. It's super big, and there's there are so many things to do and like different little mechanics that work and that work with this game to make it feel weirdly immersive for the time.
Okay.
So, for instance, you can collect, you can acquire a horse and ride a horse, and like that's like a big part of the game is your mode of transportation. But you have to feed your horse in order to keep its stats up, and you have to brush your horse, because if you don't brush your horse and it gets dirty, its stats start to lower over time. And while you're riding, you can't just it's not like other games where there's usually some quality of life things to like let you, maybe hold X to go at max speed. You actually have to press X in a rhythmic sense to how your horse is trotting or galloping in order to maintain max speed without draining too much stamina.
Okay.
There's also, your inventory is limited to whether or not you're by your horse. So your horse has most of your weapons and things, and you can when you're by your horse, you can pull out okay, I'm going to take my bow and arrow so I can go hunting, or I'm going to take my Springfield rifle so I can shoot some people, or, the myriad of pistols and magnum or revolvers that you get throughout the game. You get all that stuff from your horse. There's also limited inventory space to kind of, it makes it feel authentic, I guess is the word I'm going to use for it. But there's, like I said, there's a bunch, one of the main focuses is to acquire cash, because you guys are trying to make enough so that you can pull off that big heist, so that you guys can basically live off the land somewhere else.
The last job.
Yeah, and so you can hunt animals, and that's kind of weirdly, there's a whole process to that. You can track them, and you got to follow their paths, and you can study them so that you can figure out the quality of the pelt or the meat that you would get from it. There are certain tricks to getting the best fur off of certain animals, and that it's almost its own game. It's so intricate, and I could spend a whole hour explaining the intricacies of everything, but there is a lot going on, and there's a lot of interesting mechanics that immerse you in that kind of Wild West vibe that it's going for.
Sure.
Weapons degrade, so you have to clean them, so you always should have oil with you so that you can clean your guns, and that can affect the stats of the guns if you leave them dirty for too long. There's a bunch of shit to do. You can gamble, you can play poker to basically gain money, you can rob stores, you can rob people, you can rob stagecoaches, trains. If there is something with a wallet attached to it, you probably can rob it.
Oh my god.
And then even the law enforcement system is interesting, because it's not you shoot somebody out in the middle of nowhere and you're, there's a wanted star or whatever, in Grand Theft Auto games. Somebody has to go by, see that you're next to that body, and then they'll try to report it to the authorities, and then you get a bounty on your head. And then you can pay off that bounty at the post office. There's a bunch of these intricate and immersive mechanics that make the game feel like a rootin' tootin' Western, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
There's also really funny nuanced mechanics, stuff that don't really affect the gameplay, but the fact your hair and your beard grow in the game, and you can't you can only get a haircut or your beard trimmed based on how much beard hair you have. So right now I've got this guy with a big thick mustache, huge chops, but I'm leaving his chin shaved off.
Okay.
You can also gain and lose weight by eating in game, and that has effects on your stats. There are dialogue options for how you want to you with people.
Ooh,
so
dialogue trees.
Yeah, I mean, dialogue tree, I think I should be more specific. Dialogue options, you are able to go up to people and either, aggravate them and start fights, or you can just, be howdy, and go on your way. There are usually multiple ways to deal with either missions or people in the game, which is really nice.
Uh-huh.
And then my favorite mechanic of the game is the dead eye, and anyone who's played it before, it's kind of the bullet time mode where you can tag people in slow-mo, and then when you pull the trigger, you kind of do the real quick bang 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 with the magnum, and it hits all those spots that you tagged.
Yeah.
Kind of like the McCree's High Noon, if you will.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Yeah, so...
I know that reference. I got that reference in Captain America. That's actually the line I understood that reference, but hey, whatever, we're rolling with it, huh?
But there is one thing that I don't like.
Lay it on me.
So the game's like fighting mechanics and just its mechanics are slow and deliberate for that immersive feel, but sometimes with the way that mechanics are layered on each other, I often found myself getting in situations where I couldn't react fast enough to what the game was throwing at me because I was like stuck in like a lot of startup time for, because like you don't just like immediately pull out like a health potion and drink it. Like there's like a whole animation that you have to go through, and while that's happening, people can still be shooting at you while that stuff happens. So like if you're like, oh shit, I don't have the right gun out, like you have to go through a whole animation to put the one gun away and pull the new one out. And so that slowness on top of like for instance, if you want to shoot your gun while you're on a horse, like if you want to maintain speed on your horse, you either have to hold or press X. You then have to aim with the left trigger. And then the way guns work is if you miss the first shot, or say the first shot doesn't kill somebody, you can't just press the button again to shoot a second time. You have to like manually, because it's like they're like old Springfield rifles. So like,
sure,
you have to press the right trigger again to manually put in the next shot and then take another shot. And so if you add all that stuff together, and then the fact that sometimes the game likes to throw a curveball, like, another rival bandit gang jumps you and it's 1 versus 6, and you don't have the right stuff out, and you're trying to do that, and sometimes it feels like the game cheats me because I can't get like my right stuff out for these like random encounters, you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
But that being said, for me, if I were to rate how it's more of an inconvenience because the rest of the game has been a exceptional ride, it would be like the difference between a 9.8 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10. Like, it's so minor because of all these other good things that are going on. Like, it is a story game, and it's well written, it's well told through the characters throughout the game. I mean, overall, it's a good game, and I'm really looking forward to getting to the end and like seeing what actually plays out. Because I hear once I get to a certain chapter, things get wild and crazy, and
sure,
yeah. That's what I gotta say about Red Dead 2. I think it's great. If you like open world games and you want a cool Western, look no further.
All right, so I do have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Have you had anything like crazy or wacky happen in your game yet? I saw a video online that you might have seen yourself where it was called "A Deer Saved Me from a Side Quest," which is the protagonist rides up and the lady's like, "I lost my wagon." And then a deer runs right into her and knocks her out cold.
Yeah, a couple of things have happened. The horse physics are a little wonky at times.
Okay.
So I've done some things that I probably shouldn't have been able to do because the horse like did something weird. And I've gotten into a situation before where there was that same thing where it was like a quest giver who's like, help, I got bit by a snake. I need some help. And then an elk just charged across the screen because I had shot my gun earlier.
Oh.
And just totally kills this dude. And I'm like, well, what can I do?
Yeah, there's not much you can do at that point there, partner.
Right. There's like, all the side quests are pretty dope for the most part. There was one where you have to like help this guy who's like a traveling circus get his circus animals back.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, and you actually have to like go and find these animals, and that's a super fun quest, although I think it ends, at least it ended for me tragically.
Oh no. But
super good game. The game is silly. And yeah, I'm super excited to finish it for sure. When I finish it, and if the story doesn't hold up at the end, I'll give my feedback. But at least for this first 20 hours of the game, like, oh, so good.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we move on?
Yes, let's transition.
It's time to learn about our social media. So that's why you come here to that middle section you can't avoid unless you fast forward a little bit. Hey guys, welcome to the middle section where we talk about our social media.
Yeah. Can't skip it.
Right, Winku. So yeah, if you wanna jump in on this conversation, if you wanna tell me how much you love and or hate Red Dead Redemption 2, or talk about Blackbeard or all these fun things, you can tweet at us at fandomr_podcast. That's where we are on Twitter, and that's where a lot of our special tweets go for when shows or when episodes are coming out, if they don't come out on the usual Thursday, and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
You can also send us in personal questions or potential stuff, and now is actually a really good time because we are discussing what season 2 is going to be. So if you'd like to potentially help us direct our conversation, you can email us at fanroulettepodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Or you can go to www.fandomroulette.com and find us there. We have little bios for the two of us. We got all of our episodes on there, and then at the very bottom, there's a little thing you can fill out so you can ask us questions, and it won't ask you for an email or anything, so it's not like spam, I promise.
Yeah.
We're also on iTunes and SoundCloud and wherever you get podcasts from. So if as a thank you to us, you can go and rate and subscribe and push us through the ranks so that we can get to more people, and so everybody can enjoy the wackiness of us.
Join in, come on in.
Yeah, we're also on Facebook and Instagram and Tumblr at Fandom Roulette.
Oh, geez, so much media. So
right,
social,
all
so
of
media.
The social medias.
Oh man, look at us, social medias.
Yeah.
Opinions, media, social,
Ooh.
Buzzwords.
Right.
Engagement.
So that's I'm just gonna ignore that and move on.
I don't know what you're talking about. That was beautiful and perfect. Social. It's middle section. Middle section.
Right. So
hey,
we've been working on building a world, but do you smell that?
Oh no.
Oh man.
It smells so
it
bad.
Smells like burnt armpit hair.
Yeah, I'm always so excited to see what your smell is. Every week, I'm always like, I wonder what smell he's got for me. It's like my personal middle section song.
Yeah. But guys, this is a Garbage Kid where we take out of the garbage this child monstrosity that we cooked up with the top leading scientists of the world and a nice little book called Xanathar's Guide to Everything. And I know what you're thinking, Joe. Yes, everything. And so we cooked this Garbage Kid up with top written names so that you, the audience, can just use them for your RPGs. Maybe you want an NPC who's goofy as fuck, or you want to play this character out. Any of that fanfic that you want to create for all of these lovable characters, feel free to send that our way, because Joe has said he will read them verbatim.
Yes.
Verbatim. And this week...
Now, I will say, do give us 1 week of letting me read it before I read it on the podcast, just to make sure everything is cool and clear.
Right.
And it'll give me a little bit of time to add a little bit of dramatic flair to it, like develop character voices and such.
Yeah.
But anyways.
So this week, I've concocted Ivy Fiendstrife, the human rogue.
Ooh, a human rogue.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
So, Ivy knew who their parents were and was born at home.
Aw.
Ivy is the youngest of 8 siblings and was raised by an adoptive family because their parents abandoned them.
Whoa.
Ivy lived a modest lifestyle in a rundown shack. Riddle me that, I wonder. Ivy had a few close friends and lived an ordinary childhood.
Okay.
Ivy became a rogue because they wanted to turn their lucky streak into the basis of their career.
All right.
Ivy knew that they would need to hone their skills. Ivy's guilty pleasure is large gems. Ivy's adversary is a fence who uses Ivy as a messenger to set up illicit meetings. Ivy's benefactor is a magistrate who once kept Ivy out of jail for information on a powerful crime lord.
Interesting.
Ivy is 25 years old.
All right, good age.
And has had 3 life events leading up to this moment.
All right, pretty good for a 25-year-old.
Yeah. Ivy went on an adventure.
Hooray.
And was poisoned by a monster.
Oh, no. That's not so good.
Ivy would then make a friend of an adventurer.
Okay.
Finally, a close family member died by being consumed by a monster.
Well, then, yikes.
Yep. I rolled real good on this one.
Yeah, so okay. So now we gotta rate this.
Yeah,
this
I'll give you the floor first. Hot topic?
Okay. So as always, we're gonna go to our super scientific scorecard that is whether or not they would go to Hot Topic and buy something.
Yes.
There. And I am going to say no.
Interesting.
They would steal something.
They would steal those Funko Pop figures?
Yeah.
And their
from their favorite anime.
Yeah, and also steal their favorite Incubus CD.
Sure, obviously, and obviously they're gonna steal that Hufflepuff scarf they've been looking at for a while.
Nice, and those Invader Zim socks. Damn it, I can't talk.
Those Invader Sim ska socks.
Yeah,
to one of your favorite ska concerts.
Yes, I agree.
Real big fish in Invader Sim socks.
I agree. I think Ivy definitely goes into Hot Topic and is definitely taking a lot of their inventory.
Yeah, because if Ivy isn't stealing, they ain't living, man.
Right.
So yeah, write some fanfic about Ivy or any of the other garbage kids.
Yeah.
I want to read fanfic.
So, so this season for the tabletop or just your role-playing game section in general, we've been talking about world building because I know I love doing it when I have the time. I know you were working on a project, so it just really fit into our lives to talk about this super nerdy topic.
Oh, one of the nerdiest.
Right,
so
and this is the finale. We have talked about building your theme, which kind of the reason, what's your purpose behind making this? We built a town together.
Oh, it was so nice.
Or presumably a lot of them after you built the first one.
Sure.
We built factions for the area that we're going to play in. We built kingdoms, which is basically like a collective of towns and cities and, those kinds of things. We built political structures to govern and rule these areas. We built culture to provide life and meaning and those little extra nuances behind everything. We talked about religion, which I feel like is kind of a part of culture. A lot of these kind of blend together, but, we talked about religion, and in a fantasy world, you can, the gods or God or whatever, those can have very lasting effects in terms of like your culture and things like that. And then finally, and certainly not least, we talked about magic and how magic works, because we were kind of doing this from the perspective of a fantasy world, and magic, it's everywhere. Like, I have a hard time thinking of a fantasy thing that I've heard of that doesn't have some form of magic in it.
At least to some degree,
Right. And so this week we decided that we would, well, why don't you take it?
So we're gonna wrap it up by doing kind of a little bit of a 2-part thing, which was just kind of giving one final little overview of our world, maybe a what comes next idea, and then I thought it'd be kind of interesting to maybe think about or formulate some adventures or some things that might happen in your world. So I'll start. I don't have the name in front of me, so my apologies. But my little kingdom was a racially diverse republic that had a number of small towns. Did not necessarily have kind of like hierarchies or well, there's like economic hierarchies, and then of course you had my big thing that I was kind of envisioning that almost all of my campaigns started here to a certain degree, which was that most all of my player characters are going to begin, at least in some capacity, as members of Azer's Mercy Band, which is a group of criminals who are trying to gain their freedom. And so you're probably going to say to yourself, well, Joe, you're always starting off your campaign the same way. How does that get exciting? Would that get boring for you as a dungeon master? My thing about it was that by the end of session 1, players have made enough choices that it could go into at least one of 3 very radical different directions. So the first direction would be that you complete the mission as scheduled, and you continue working for Azer's Mercy Band until you get your bracelets removed, and then at that point you can start traveling anywhere you'd like. You can start traveling to different countries where things or worlds might look differently. The second one would be that due to some encounters, you decide to join up with the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood that's led by the sort of Robin Hood-esque figure who has his bands, but has been able to elude the law in Azer's Mercy Band for a long period of time. And he kind of makes you soldiers in his personal political revolution to save the kingdom from threats that you don't necessarily see. Or the third one is that you end up working for the government because you have a run-in with the governor of the town. And then my big thing was, so, obviously you could have like little side quests or side missions depending on the towns you were going to visit. Not all of them were necessarily going to be super duper weighty or super duper plot relevant. So thinking back to like in our personal campaign, that like Romeo and Juliet story that we did.
Yeah.
Or, I also was imagining too that perhaps sometimes people might leave the borders of this kingdom, and other bordering places might have different cultures, different systems, or different, styles of quests. But my main kingdom is going to be pretty standard, Tolkien-esque fantasy. What's the official term for that? I forget. Heroic fantasy?
Gosh, it's been a while since we actually talked about.
I think it's heroic fantasy, but
yeah,
if I'm wrong,
yeah.
I'm wrong. And in some areas it might be a little bit more murder mystery intrigue-y. Maybe sometimes it's more heisty, things like that. So depending on where you go, you would discover. Now, in terms of what comes next, I have not really developed much about these other worlds outside of the borders. However, I had always anticipated giving myself enough time to develop cultures as the people were traveling there. Unless, of course, someone has some super broken, like, teleportation spell or something. But I say always give yourself enough time to develop cultures as people are traveling. So when they get to that different kingdom, you're ready to go. But where I have people starting, you're pretty central to the center of the kingdom. So it would take at least a couple of sessions for your crew to walk, ride, or travel to a border of the kingdom. So
cool.
All right. Would you like to go on, Cody?
Yeah. So for my Lundar area that I created, this kind of grim, dark fantasy, I started with the one-shot idea and what that entails, and then how to move forward from that. So The initial idea is that Hulfried, a long-standing member of the notorious faction The House and owner of the flawless Stallion Casino in Kreisuvik, wants a would-be group of adventurers to uncover a mysterious happening. Guards are being attacked and killed during the night, and the investigators that work in ties with the house are getting nowhere with any of the local factions, beggars, or just the local populace in general. And so in this one shot, you would be adventurers who are coming for this, this kind of grand prize of a quest, like something that seems super easy with a lot of money attached to it. And from there, the initial, like, it's basically it's a murder mystery where you go around town, you question people, and you try to figure out who done it and what possibly is on the horizon after that. I have other notes here, but none of that's super relevant to what happens next. And so I think for a campaign, I usually like to run a session 0 for like the kind of campaign, but for this, I would, I think the initial idea is that this group has banded together, whether they be adventurers seeking fortune by high stakes, adventurers, or outlaws looking to make a quick buck in a town as they, progress. I would, introduce, because like the two factions in the town that I have created, the house is this kind of, I don't want to say it's an organization that basically runs all of the casinos and the nightlife and the red light district in the town, and they want you to stay there as long as possible to spend your money, and they are the law, so they create the rules, and that could lead to an unfortunate oversight where now you're indebted to them because you didn't do the job as they said, or what have you, and that could lead elsewhere. You could also travel the world and explore Lundar and all of its kind of ruined glory, for expanding out. Joe, this is going to be a shocker to you and to the people who are playing in the 6, but I created Lundar as a continent that exists in the world that you guys are playing in after the events of your campaign.
What? Oh yeah, that's right. We like blow everything up, don't we?
Yeah, so
Whoops.
There's a big thing that happens, and I alluded to it in the religion section with the gods all of a sudden disappearing. And so that's the general idea and that's what's really cool about building your worlds and your kingdoms and stuff like that, is like it doesn't have to be one continent. It can be several continents, and each continent has a different flavor or vibe or theme. And eventually you'll get this big, world with, like, I don't know, who knows, like 8 continents and archipelagos and all these land masses with different vibes going on, so you can tell different stories. And then from there, the sky's the limit. I mean, it's your world. Use it how you need it.
Exactly.
So that's my idea. I figured the seedier the area, the better for like an ongoing campaign, because nothing says like a good adventure like getting caught up in some crime family business.
Sure, obviously.
Yeah, and that's what I got.
That's our like kind of little introduction to world building. Let me say, this part was super fun. And way less intimidating than I thought it was going to be. My big thing still, I'm not going to lie, is developing encounters, but maybe that's something that we can talk about in future episodes to put myself at ease. But I do intend on this world being used. Probably at this point in the year, it's getting a little late for me to actually run anything in it because my life gets really complicated in December. But perhaps next year I will have some fun and games in my own little world that we can try out, and I'll report back to see how it works. So
yeah, I'll be super excited to hear about it.
I'd be interested to see
or playing in it even. That would be dope too.
Yeah.
So should we end this bad boy?
I think we should wrap her up. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to yet another episode of Fandom Roulette.
Thanks,
as
guys.
Always, super duper fun. We love doing this. We love talking to you. This is the end of season 1, which is pretty exciting.
Woo!
So we should be getting back to you shortly about what the next season entails. I have kind of an inkling of an idea. But yeah.
Yeah, so next week we're going to have a shorter episode than normal. We're going to do our mini-sode 2 as we transition from season 1 to season 2 and kind of go over what we, maybe talk about what we did in season 1 a little bit and then kind of go over what we plan to do for season 2. And then we're going to take a break. We're going to take a week. And then we will be back. Yeah. So stay tuned for our next episode where we kind of get the dates all settled out and, get
pretty exciting. So
yeah.
And as always, please go back to the middle section and figure out that social media. Share it with a friend. Like, rate, review, subscribe. All of that stuff that I'm sure if you listen to enough podcasts, you hear week in and week out. But it's really useful for us because we're doing this for fun and out of the goodness of our hearts. And it'd just be cool to get a little bit of recognition for it. So,
yeah.
And I want to thank you all so much once again for listening. Signing off, this is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.